Fruitful Life podcast, where we're constantly talking about life, growth, and occasionally surviving some silly events. This week, let's talk about something that I have a lot of this year. We got 4 weddings to go to this year. So I just wanted to jump in and talk about some of the things that go on in 2026 when it comes to planning a wedding. So planning the wedding now just isn't like planning a wedding. I'm going to be 48 this year, been to plenty of weddings in my lifetime, and how weddings are handled now is not the same way that they were when I was younger. Not even close. Planning a wedding now is almost like planning the world's largest event ever, a concert, a convention, any of those kind of things. And it's not what it used to be, not even close. When I was younger, it was, let's find a place. You got to worry about the food and what they have to offer there, DJ, the flowers, the dress, who you were going to be in your wedding party, all those basic things. But for the most part, it wasn't the production that it is now. It is absolutely wild to me to see how many different moving pieces and the exact cost of what it's like to have to plan a wedding now, which just makes me so much happier that when Audrey and I did ours, we did it very low key, very much, backyard kind of a thing. We just had a JP and we did it very, very simple because like in today's world, as you're looking at how these weddings go and all the moving pieces that go with it, it's expensive. It's almost as expensive as starting your own business. And a lot of people now they're, like getting a wedding planner was like a thing for the ultra rich when I was growing up. Now we have wedding planners for just about everything. People start their Pinterest board and start spreadsheets and start watching TikTok videos and all of these other things to be able to put together what they want to be their wedding. And it just like it blows my mind because people go into these things thinking that their budget is going to be one thing. And then as they start putting together some of these moving pieces, they start to realize that that's not at all what this is going to cost. Because everybody thinks that weddings are expensive, but until you really start to plan a wedding, you don't realize how expensive it's going to be. You just don't. Like right now, when it comes to an overall budget and what the average is that people spend, it's close to $40,000, I think, is what on the low side of what an average wedding costs now. So you go into it thinking that maybe it's going to cost you about 20. And by the time you get done putting all the moving pieces together and whatever else, you're in literally an exotic car. And that is the reality of it. Depending on where you go, like that price could change. Some places are going to be about $30,000 just for the venue, not including chairs, tables, whatever. Like that's just the venue for essentially what is 4-hour wedding. And I think the thing that kind of ruined a lot of that was that social media has been phenomenal for a lot of different things. Like you can get some great ideas as to decor and all that stuff that you would want for your wedding. And you can get all kinds of other like great ideas about color schemes and flower arrangements. You can get great ideas for venues, all of that through your social media platforms. And I think that part of it is fucking phenomenal because it's no longer about a magazine or going to like a bridal convention or any of those things. It's much simpler than that. And I think that part of it is absolutely amazing. The downside is that now we see all of these things and we want them and we want them to be a part of our wedding. But until you really start sitting down and start putting all those pieces together, you don't realize how fucking expensive a wedding really is. And that's just the beginning, right? So the first thing that you after you get engaged is you start thinking about like where you want to get married. And then all the other pieces start to fall into place after that. The DJ, the flowers, the photographer, the food. Is it a venue that does food or do you have to bring in an outside caterer and all of those other moving pieces, the dresses, the tuxedos or whatever it is that you're going to have your bridal party wear. And that is just the beginning of the stress. That's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to start planning a wedding. Once you get to the point where you are engaged and you start thinking about venues, the very next piece that tends to be one of the more expensive parts of it is you start making a list of people that you would want to be at your wedding. And I think it's a no-brainer that your immediate family is always going to be that, and your group of friends, your best friends or whatever. And it's absolutely incredible to me that what could really be a 40 to 60 person thing, and that's with, spouses, your immediate family, good friends, a plus ones, whatever the case may be, to it's now rolled into about 140, 150 people. And each one of those people on a bare minimum is $150 a plate. And as you start putting this stuff together, like this is where the cost really rises when it comes to selecting a venue, because the venue price is one thing, right? And then depending on how many people you have coming, depends on how big of a room you have, which now fluctuates your cost. So let's just do the math on that, right? So if you have 100 people at $300 a plate, that's what, 30 grand right there. 30 grand, and you haven't even bought the dress. You haven't paid for the photographer. You haven't paid for the DJ. You haven't paid for flowers. You haven't done anything yet. And you spent 30 grand already. I think it's really important that when people start thinking about that and they start thinking about their list of the people who you want to invite, I think too many times people that are getting married get pressured into having to invite somebody just because they were invited to your wedding. But at the same time, like that was their choice to invite you. And if you're not that close with them anymore, you shouldn't have to feel obligated to invite them to yours. Or that family member that you see once every 2 years, like you don't need to invite them either. Either there's no obligation whatsoever. If they are not close enough to you to be there for one of the most intimate moments of your life, then don't feel obligated, and don't allow anybody to pressure you into feeling like you have to invite these people. So after you get that done, right? So now you're engaged, you're doing your head count to decide how many people there's going to be, so that now you can start really narrowing down what venue you want to use, and that cost, and looking at all those things and setting your appointments to be able to go and see these places. The next thing is you start thinking about the theme of your wedding, or the decor, or any of those things. And that can just become a back and forth. And some guys really don't care about what it is. They know that for some women that it is something that they've dreamed about their entire lives, and they want it to be perfect, and they want it to be all of these things. And, like I've never had an issue with that. Like, I do think that at least in my generation, from the time, you're a little girl all the way up and seeing relationships and going through all this stuff, you dream about the day that you're going to be married and what you want that to look like. And I get it. Like it's a big aspect of your life. It's one of the more significant pieces that happens during your life. But the reality of it is that this event is really only 4 hours of your life. And it's supposed to be a celebration of your relationship with your now spouse. It's not about anybody else. It's about you and your spouse. And while that planning is going on, the bride and groom always tend to feel some kind of a pressure from family members, from friends, that it has to have this, and you have to do that, and you have to do this, and blah, 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 blah. And you have to, again, you have to invite these people and do all these things. And I don't think that a bride and groom have ever kind of sat back and really taken a look at that and said, this is my time. Like I hate going to weddings and see the bride and groom spend 3/4 of their time walking around thanking everybody for coming when you invited them. You can stand up just like when the best man and the bridesmaid and all those people get up and they make that speech. Why can't the bride and groom just get up at that moment and say, listen, we just want to take this time to thank you guys so much for coming. We appreciate you being a part of our special moment. And everybody raise a glass and cheers to that, instead of walking around forgetting to eat and just being stressed out about all the moving pieces. And that's not what it's about. it's really about the celebration of all the other things, about the bride, about the groom, about um your significant other, whatever your relationship is, and it's about you two, and it's about what got you to this moment, and it's about the future, and it's about all of those things. It's not about all the other stuff. That I think needs to be or the reality of it all, and as you start going through these things and you look at an end total of, 30, 40, $50,000 for an event that is probably about 4 hours out of your life. And don't get me wrong, it's a huge time in everybody's life for those that either want to get married or are married or are getting married, and I get all of that. But at the same time, in this age, people spend that money like it's nothing, and in the same breath will haggle back and forth with a car dealership on spending $30,000 for a car that they're going to drive for at least 5 years. 4 hours, $40,000, 5 years, $40,000. I don't understand the mindset of, well, we're only going to do this once. The reality of that is, and I'm just speaking from my own life experience, I've been married 3 times, divorced twice, and you never know how those relationships are going to work out and what happens. There's a lot of different things that, people do, and a lot of things that make relationships break down and all of those things. It might not be the only time you get married, and it might not be, the best relationship that you've ever been in. It has been up to that point, and I'm not saying it's going to dissolve, but you need to just be the reality of it is that I think I bet if I looked at the numbers, for every 100 marriages, there's 50 divorces. Like, that's not a good number. That's actually kind of scary if it's even remotely close to that. We're at a point where, a wedding's going to cost you 40 G's. And as you start doing this, this new trend of the bachelorette and bachelor parties being, 3, 4, 5 days away, and it's costing everybody, a grand plus to go to this thing. And I never really understood that, like everybody used to say, and they did when I was younger too, like, oh, it's your last hurrah. But like the reality is that you've been in that relationship for how long already if you're asking that person to marry you. So it's not your last hurrah. And it's not a hall pass to go out and be reckless and do all things that violate your relationship. I'm not saying that everybody does that, does things that violate their relationship, but like I think those priorities and this whole vacation thing has kind of really turned into more about those in the wedding party and less about the bachelorette or the bachelor. All that stuff kind of used to be surprise, when I was younger, and everybody already knew that like a bachelor party just meant all the guys were getting together. They were going to drink beers. They were going to eat, I don't know, sausage and peppers, pizzas, whatever. And there was going to be strippers. Now, like none of that was ever my thing. I would rather hang out with my friends and go play a round of golf or do a Jack and Jill. I was never really into that kind of thing. Like I never felt the need to want to go out and do the whole strippers and getting wasted thing. I just it's not something that intrigued me. I've been to too many of them and seen fights and ridiculousness. I've seen bachelors hook up with strippers. I've just seen a mess. And none of it to me is worth it. Like I would never want to put myself in that position that's how I'm gonna start my marriage is by doing questionable things just before I get married. So I don't understand, this going away thing. I just it's not for me. And like Audrey and I had talked about um, that part of it. And if I want to go someplace and celebrate the fact that, like this is the last time that we're not going to be known as Mr. and Mrs. or whatever your case may be per your relationship, I would want to do that together. I'd want to be able to say like, this is the last time that we got away as just a couple before we became husband and wife. And that part of it is important to me. And yeah, you know, you bring your best man and whatever. And if you're going to spend the money, then you do it collectively. It doesn't need to be a full week of me going to hang out with the guys and spending all this money. And the other point I want to make on that is that, like for the amount of money that you're asking people to spend to be able to go and do this, and by all means, the bachelor and the bachelorette should not have to foot any of that. Like if this is what you guys want to do to celebrate, before getting married, like so be it. But it shouldn't cost the bachelor and the bachelorette anything. The whole purpose of those parties was to raise money for the people getting married, not to blow more money to go and celebrate, the last hurrah or whatever the hell you want to call it. It's ridiculous. It's not what it's about. Why don't you just save the money and do a destination wedding and go someplace for a week and get married, midweek or towards the end of the week or whatever, and use that as a giant celebration. There's no reason to do any of this other nonsense because it's not actually about the bachelor or the bachelorette. Yeah, like you celebrate them when you're there, but if they had to pay any part of then it was a failure as far as I'm concerned, because it shouldn't be about that. It's just it's become the wedding and those bachelor and bachelorette parties have become more about the people that are invited and less about a celebration of the people that it's actually for. And that's takes away, honestly, from the respect of the relationship, the love, the work that was put in to even get to that point so that all these other people could celebrate where this relationship got to. It's a lot to wrap your head around. And honestly, it's a mess. You know, Audrey and I just did the Justice of the Peace in the backyard, and we're gonna plan a big celebration thing, either this spring or early summer. And we're gonna do that so that everybody can come and just celebrate with us. We never thought about doing any of that other stuff, like I wouldn't want to be in a position where I don't have my best friend, her, not be there by my side to enjoy every minute that I get to go and enjoy. If I'm gonna go and have a good time, I want her by my side. And I know that's like weird to a lot of people, but a lot of people in relationships just want to have their time apart. But like, if I'm gonna go and do something that's gonna be a memorable experience, I want her to be there to be a part of it. That's just how I feel about her and how I feel about our relationship. I don't want to experience anything and then come back and have to show her pictures or talk to her about it. I'd rather her be there. And I think that's really what a relationship is about. It's about putting those pieces together so that when you get to that point, the person that you're with is the person that you're with, and that you're celebrating the experiences that got them to that moment. So with that said, let me know if you guys agree. I'd really be interested to hear what everybody's thoughts are on the bachelor and the bachelorette parties, and really be interested to hear what people think is, a reasonable budget for a wedding, and what are your do's and don'ts, and where's your limit. With that said, thank you guys for listening. Check out all the social media pages, do the things, like, follow, check them out. Baines Brewing, Brewed for Life podcast, and the Dad Son community on Instagram, and of course, the Brewed for Life on TikTok. Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you guys next week.